So I want to welcome everyone to the HEAL Trauma RFP pre-bid conference. This procurement has been really a labor of love for us. We've worked with, as you guys could see from the front, one of the front pages of the procurement, many people in the community to develop this concept, and we're happy to give you the opportunity to hear more about it and to consider submitting an application for it. So, and my name's, I don't think I've introduced myself. One of the things I often forget to do. So Maria Juarez-Stouffer, I'm CSE's Chief Program Officer. We have a couple of folks that will be presenting to you as well. And when it's their turn to come online to do the presentation, they'll introduce themselves. So again, welcome to the HEAL Trauma RFP pre-bid conference. So I'm gonna just jump right in and start going through what I'd like you to review. So hopefully you will have the opportunity, you will review the entire procurement. We're gonna highlight some areas that I want you to pay attention to. And one of the most important areas of this procurement is our timetable. So what I would strongly recommend is that you keep that right next to your computer screen and realize, recognize some of the really important deadlines on this timetable. So today is the pre-bid conference, June 22nd. You will have until June 24th at 12 p.m. to submit any written questions that you may not have thought to ask during this pre-bid conference. And maybe you'll think of the question after the conference ends. You'll still have an opportunity to submit the written question to us. You do that in the CAP system, and we'll go into that a little bit more detail, but that's a really important date. After the June 24th at 12 p.m., after that time passes, we cannot accept any more questions about this procurement. We'll post the question and answer document from the procurement on June 23rd or before. So June 30th. June 30th is our deadline. We're going to try to get it out as soon as possible so that you guys have those questions and answers when you're preparing your applications. We have noticed in the past that not everyone goes back in and reviews the question and answer document from the pre-bid. We really do encourage you to go back into the CAP system and review that document. That will be helpful to you when you're completing the application for funding. Another important date is July 9th at 4 o'clock. This is when you have to submit your agency financial viability information to us in the CAP system. If you miss this date, you cannot apply for this application. So this is a really important date, please. And we're going to go into this in more detail also, but I really want you to highlight that. That's a critical date in your application process. And then the deadline to submit this application is August 4th. So that's another really important date for you to keep, highlight from this timetable. The applicant interviews are going to be August 31st to September 1st. And again, I would put that on your calendars. So if you submit an application, you will be given a time for an applicant interview. It'll fall in that time frame, August 31st to September 1st. And then we bring the awards to the council at our September 23rd meeting. That's when our council will see the awards that are being recommended by the rating committee, and then they will review and vote on the awards on September 23rd. And our contract effective date is November 1st of 2021, and that will be dependent on, of course, the awardees and whether we're able to negotiate a budget and a contract with you by November 1st. So this timetable is really important to the process. Are there any questions about the timetable? And Key, I'll ask you to, I don't see everyone, so I can't see if anyone has their hands up. No questions?
Yeah. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
What is an agency financial viability test?
So we're going to get to that specific section later in the presentation.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll go into a lot of detail with that. So we'll make sure to answer your question when we get to that section.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if there are no questions about the timetable, I'll go on to page 5 of the procurement. Is it page 5? It's my page 5. It's, yes. And who may apply. So just to review the section, who may apply, we encourage applicants with experience in the provision of culture-centered, trauma-informed mental health support services for youth and families to submit an application. And the applicant is expected to have an understanding of the community to be served and have demonstrated success provided community embedded and community owned and community driven services. So those are aspects of any applicant that's considering to apply for this procurement. We do want applicants that have an understanding of the community that they're going to serve and that they have demonstrated success in providing services in those communities. The service goal and budgeted amount. So this is this procurement is under service goal 2.1. It's our family strengthening line of service, and the budget that we have allocated to this procurement is approximately $2 million. And this would be for beginning November 1st, 2021. So fiscal year 21-22, we've allocated $2 million. We anticipate that there will be 3 total awards. So 1 for the Northeast region of the county, 1 for the Central East region, and 1 for the Southeast region. And within the procurement, we explain those areas of the county in a lot of detail. If you want to apply for all 3 regions of the county, if you want to submit an application for the North and an application for Central and an application for South, you would need to submit 3 separate applications. Okay, so I'll say that again. If you want to submit for the North, for the Central, and for the South, East region requires an application. Okay, so that's important for you to remember. So desired population is youth between birth and the age of 17. And again, the Northeast, Central East, and Southeast regions of the county. We do include in the attachments more information about those regions. And we're looking at, for the Northeast, Deerfield Beach and Pompano Beach. For the Central area, Fort Lauderdale and unincorporated Broward. And for the Southeast region, West Park, Hollywood, Dania Beach, Highlandale Beach, and Pembroke Park. So within those regions, we've identified the social vulnerability index within those regions, which uses 15 census tracts, and it tells you where within those areas we want services focused. So if you're looking at Deerfield, you would go to the SVI for Deerfield and then see, okay, where in Deerfield are we looking for services to be focused, so that you can get an idea of where in the area we want the community mental health worker model to be. And let's see. So at this point, what I've covered, do you guys have any questions with the information that I've covered? No.
No questions.
Any questions? Oh, did you say no? Okay. So then I'll turn it over to Brooke to discuss the program components, which start on page 6.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brooke Sherman. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to start with the program components. Like Mom said, they can be found on page 6. And just letting you guys know that CSC is looking to purchase a community mental health model that utilizes trusted community members who help other community members access services and advocate for system change and to better support their community. So awardees delivering this model would be expected to provide program components, including a strengths-based needs assessment, resource map, family empowerment, which includes outreach, health advocacy, school system advocacy, financial resources, legal advocacy, linkage to career counseling or job training, and informal counseling. And for further details, all program components can be found under Section G on pages 6 through 9. And the next area I'm going to go into is the implementation plan, which can be found on page 9. And typically, we usually ask you all to provide us with your implementation plan. But since this is a new area, we wanted to communicate our expectations with you. So we've created a tentative implementation plan to assist in guiding you with this procurement. So the full details are there. And just to note again, the anticipated contract implementation date is November 1st, but it all depends on the contract negotiation process. All right. And then I'm going to go over the staffing requirements, which can be found on pages 9 through 11. And we really just want to highlight some of these areas as it is a different staffing pattern in this new area. So to best support the identified communities, Heal Trauma awardees will ensure diligent efforts in staff recruitment to identify passionate, qualified staff dedicated to long-term engagement with these communities. So the goal is to hire staff trained in the community mental health worker model who have connections to the identified communities and are trusted community members who hold the role of the community health worker, mental health worker. And we would have the community mental health worker and community mental health worker team lead. So currently in process right now, there are a cadre of 26 individuals that are in the process of their practicum. And we will be encouraging you all to meet with them if awarded the RFP, as they've also completed the community mental health training. And so what that entails is community members are encouraged to then participate in the 30-hour community mental health worker training. And then they complete a 500-hour practicum. Once this is done, they'll be able to take the Florida Certified Health Worker exam. While all this is going on, we're providing them with coaching to assist in the certification. We also are providing stipends for community members during their training and practicum hours. And we anticipate during the last quarter of this current year having another community mental health worker training and practicum to continue to grow this area of work. On page 10, it does outline the description of your anticipated staffing pattern. It includes one supervisor, which is a master's level degree staff, one team lead, and 3 to 4 community mental health workers. The community mental health worker will not be providing clinical support, but clients might need additional behavioral health support and connections. And that's why each program will have a master's degree level supervisor. All staff hired must pass a level 2 background screen. And also please note that in the job description, there are minimum salary requirements that can also be found on page 10. And for the research section, there's really great information on attachment 3. So we really encourage you to review that. And then I'm just going to open it up for questions.
I have a question, Brooks, Paul Jaquith. Hey, can you just scroll back up a little bit to that training? So are we to assume that the 26 people that have been trained would be the workforce from which we would select candidates for this project, and only from that group?
So Paul, I'll answer that question. So right now, as Brooke summarized, there are 26 people that have successfully finished the 30-hour community mental health training and are in the middle meaning they're somewhere within getting their 500-hour practicum. So in the practicum is giving them supervision and coaching. And what we're looking for so whoever gets awarded these contracts, who they hire, we want them to have gone through the 30-hour training, and we want them to be, if not finished with the practicum, somewhere in the practicum. So we have 26 people that we believe by the time the contracts are effective, which we're expecting November 1st or later, will be done with their practicum or close to done with their practicum. So there'll be 26 people to interview, if you will. And we're bringing forward another cohort at the end of this fiscal year. So they'll have more folks to interview. So for us, for in this procurement, it was extremely important that the community mental health workers actually come from the communities that we are proposing to serve. And this cohort has the vast majority of the community mental health workers coming from these communities.
So if someone is in the
Maria, this is
middle of
Sherry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Paul. These folks aren't currently attached to an organization then?
No, they were recruited from in March or April. We presented to the community an opportunity for people from their communities to participate in the community mental health worker training. So some of them have full-time jobs, some of them don't have full-time jobs. So as far as the cadre of who's trained, it's they may not be connected to any specific organization.
Got it. Thank you.
And just one more follow-up on that. So if someone is somewhere in the middle, let's say, or 3/4 of the way through their practicum, would they continue with the practicum with the supervisor that they're being supervised by currently, or would it be transferred over? How would the mechanics of that, do you think, would work, Maria?
So, you know what, Paul, we'll answer that in writing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any more questions about this section?
I'm sorry, Maria.
It's okay.
Would any of those 26 be, do you think they would be appropriate for the other positions that are required in this RFP?
So, so with the 26, what we are asking any awarded organization to do is give them the opportunity to interview for the community mental health worker role or the lead community mental health worker role. That's what we're requesting, that be understanding that each organization has their own culture, that the folks may not fit in. You know, all 26 may not fit with your organization, but you may find someone that does fit. So that's what we're asking for the interviews to be offered. The master's degreed clinician, I haven't seen the resumes for the 26 folks. So I don't know if there's anyone who would have the qualifications to be the lead clinician for this program. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Bob Scardino with SunServe. So there are going to be 3 main awardees. Are there provisions for subsets from those awardees? In other words, if a very large agency that's of a general population nature receives an award, are they allowed to to contract with a smaller agency that might have a demographic specialty within that geographical area?
You know, Robert, we'll answer that in writing.
Do I have to submit that in writing, or is it being submitted based on my question here?
It's being submitted based on your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
So
go
when
ahead,
you,
Jasmine.
so when you say 3 awardees, does that mean that 3 organizations only will receive awards from the RFP?
Yeah, so we're anticipating an award. So an award in the north, 1 award in central, and 1 award in south. And an award could be, you know, so if organization A submits an application for funding, right, with all the requirements to submit through the procurement, then it would be an award for that organization.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, John. Yes, I can.
So what's the plan on scaling this? As you mentioned, in only 3 organizations are getting this. There's going to be large organizations that might be better qualified than others, and that's understandable. But down the road, what is the plan to scale this as we have 65 people on this call?
So the council has a long history of continuing to fund initiatives that are successful. This is the first procurement that we're issuing for the community mental health worker model. And for the 3 organizations that we anticipate receiving the award, we'll be working closely with them to make this as successful as we possibly can. This procurement, and we get into the time frame for release, but this procurement, trying to find the renewal options. Okay, so this procurement has 3 renewal options to it, with the last renewal option ending September 30th of 2025. And what the council generally does is, when we have successful initiatives, and you know, I'd have to say the vast majority of our initiatives are very successful, we then issue another procurement at that time. And that would be the opportunity, as you mentioned, to potentially grow the allocation in this initiative. So that, for the most part, that's been how we operate throughout the years, that we work with the programs that we have and then continue to grow the initiative as we see success with the initiative.
So if I'm understanding right, that means that there is going to be 3 years where the CSC is going to be evaluating and testing if this is a successful initiative in order to scale it to go into more funding or maybe more organizations. Is that correct? 3 years after this?
So yes, that's correct. There are times that within a procurement cycle, if we see a need, we have grown allocations to awarded organizations within a procurement cycle. So that's something that we've done in the past as well.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? So if there's no other questions on this area, let's go to page 16. And so I just wanted to point out that CSC staff and council members, potential review committee members that we would identify would be under a cone of silence. So what that means is that during this pre-bid conference, you can ask us questions about the procurement. And up until let's see, I want to make sure I get the date right. Up until June 24th at 12 p.m., you can submit questions in our CAP system, written questions that we can, that we'll add to the question and answer document. After June 24th at 12 o'clock, we cannot entertain additional questions. So, you know, if you send us an email after that time and ask a question, we cannot answer the question. The opportunity is during this pre-bid and up until June 24th at 12 o'clock to send us any written questions that you have. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. And the application submission components on page 17 and 18, just going to run through some areas for you to focus on. The certification of accuracy and compliance. This document is available to download in our CAP system, and it must be signed and dated and then uploaded into CAP. So just, you know, please make sure you do that. You need to have also submit an original IRS W-9. And again, this is available to be downloaded in CAPS. We do require an organizational chart, the 211 organizational profile, and non-CSC monitoring reports and or outcome performance for similar services. So if you have been funded by another agency for a similar service to this one, and then we would encourage you, we ask you to submit those monitoring reports for the last 12 months. If it's a CSC monitoring report, you do not have to submit a CSC monitoring report to us, CSC Broward. We have that information. And then any memorandums of agreement for site use if it's not under your direct control. So just make sure to look at the application submission components. And then the last one is the line item budget. And we're actually going to go into detail about the budget during this pre-bid conference to provide additional assistance to all of you. And just please remember the deadline is August 4th at 4 o'clock to submit the application for funding. And then I did talk about the terms of agreement briefly. So contracts are anticipated to begin November 1st of 2021 through September 30th of 2022. That would be the first funding cycle. And then we have 3 renewal options in this procurement. Please make sure that you review our core contract. The core contract is not negotiable. So before you submit an application, we encourage you to review it. And if you have legal staff to review it to ensure that if you do get awarded funding, you're able to abide by the core contract. Let's see what else. So let's see, this is just, let's go to the application rating tool section. So it's on page 23. So we encourage you to look at the application rating tool that is an attachment to this procurement. This is the rating tool that the raters will be provided and that they will use to determine the score that they give the applicant. So please make sure to look at the rating tools. We encourage you to complete the application early and then have someone read through the application using the rating tool to ensure that you've answered the questions thoroughly. Let me see. Are there any questions about this section that I just covered?
I just wanted to ask, for an organization like me who is starting out, and I really came into this thinking that I would be able to apply for funding, but now it seems like my only option is to partner with the larger organization who's already being funded by the CSC. Is that like what I should be expecting to do?
So I can't direct you on whether to apply independently or to apply with a partner. And previously I had mentioned that we are looking for organizations that have an understanding of the community that they're proposing to serve, and that they've also demonstrated success providing services in the communities. So that would be up to you to decide whether you're going to apply individually as under your organization, or whether you want to reach out to any of the organizations on this call and see if they want to partner with you. With the when we issue the pre-bid question and answer document, we also include the list of organizations and the names of the employee of that organization who participated in this pre-bid conference, so that if you did want to reach out to someone, you'll see who's on the call and who you may want to reach out to. So I think either option is acceptable, either option that you've proposed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you repeat that? You said that that would be emailed, or that will be in the CAP system?
That's in the CAP system. So our pre-bid conference, the questions and answers that we develop from the pre-bid conference are accessed through the CAP system. Also accessed through the CAP system is going to be the list of everyone who participated in this pre-bid conference.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Jasmine, could you speak to what about the procurement concerns you with submitting the application?
Well, because I just don't see myself receiving funding compared to the other organizations that are already doing work in Pompano or in Pompano and Deerfield. So I feel like that's my only option. And I know that one of the organizations that have been in the meetings with us, they are also, working with children and families that have experienced trauma. So that's where I am.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
So again, let me just say again, Jasmine, to just answer your question and say, for any organization who's considering to apply for this procurement, you are most welcome to apply for the procurement as your own organization and or partner with another organization as well. So I'm sorry, whoever said they have a question, go ahead.
So just for my understanding, so the family strengthening, it is very specifically for therapy though, is that correct? It's not, so I work with Every Mother's Advocate, we work in the Pompano Beach area, we work in family strengthening, we refer out for all of the, therapy, we refer out for housing, all of that, but we do wraparound services with moms who have children in the system. So, but this is very specifically for therapy when you're talking about or hiring a supervisor and the therapist, that's what this is for. Am I correct in assuming that?
No.
Okay.
So this procurement is to hire community mental health workers. And what we want is for the community mental health worker to be someone who is from the communities that the applicant is proposing to serve, someone who is a trusted community member, and someone who has gone through the community mental health worker training and is in the practicum. This line of service, the community mental health workers will encounter situations where someone has experienced trauma and they are not providing therapy. The community mental health worker, the minimum qualifications, if you will, for the community mental health worker is a GED or high school diploma, pass the level 2 background screen. We want them to be representative of the communities that they're serving. So they're not providing mental health therapy. What they're doing is that they're linking families in the community to other services. So they could be linking to mental health therapy. They could be linking to career source. They'll do an assessment and then they'll identify what the families need and link to services. The master's level supervisor is there to provide additional support to the community mental health workers.
Okay.
But they're not providing therapy through this
So it's not
line of
therapy
service.
within our organization, it's in who we are referring to. That's the link there.
Right, well, right, it's whatever services the families need, you would then, the community mental health worker team would identify that and then refer and connect the families to those services.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Maria, it's Paul again. In terms of the timing, the schedule that you showed before, I think it said you had from November to, I think, January to hire staff. During that interim time, let's say it goes till, you know, the middle of December before you can bring someone on board, what services typically are are we billing for then? Is it, I mean, we're going through the process that, I'm just kind of not sure what the operational component of that is, that transitional period.
Right, so let's just say that your contract is negotiated and is effective November 1st. So you'll have from November 1st, November, December, to the end of January to hire staff. And this is your startup period. First, let me back up a little bit. These contracts will be cost reimbursement. We will be tracking units when those services begin, but they are going to be cost reimbursement contracts at least the very first year. And then we'll assess in year 2, 3, et cetera, whether they'll continue cost reimbursement or whether they'll shift to unit of service. So the first 3 months, you're hiring staff. We understand it takes time to interview, to put your announcements out, and to hire staff and to bring them on to your organization. So that's what's going to happen. It may take you less time, it may take you more time, but that is the first 3 months of what we have listed in the implementation plan.
Okay, and I'm sorry to kind of dominate this, but one other question about these 26 people. How do we contact them? Is it through CSC? Is it directly to them, or what's the process of that?
So for the agencies that are awarded funding, we will share contact information regarding the 26 people. And of course, this is of the 26 of those who want to participate in an interview process with the awarded organizations. We'll connect those organizations to those community members that are interested in being interviewed.
Do they have an understanding that they might be recruited when they started this program?
Yes, yes, they do. Are there any other questions? And please, anyone who has questions, we welcome them. This is a new line of service for us, so we're really happy to answer the questions and to help you through this process.
Okay. Maria?
Yes, hi Joel.
This is Joel, hi. And this is very exciting. I just want some depth or clarification or understanding of the connectivity, the warm handoff. I'm thinking as I read this, and actually warms my heart, that it's not a referral as much as it is a referral and a hand-holding till the connection is made. And that's, I think, I just want to make sure that's clear.
You're absolutely right. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is not simply giving a family a referral. It is helping them to connect with the right services. And I'm glad you asked the question, Joel, because when we, Laura Gansey is going to talk about our measuring impact and continuous learning section next, and that will give you, I think, a better understanding of how we're going to measure the impact for these programs. But yes, to answer your question, it's more than making a referral. It's addressing the stigma that needing mental health services has for many communities. And what we're aiming to do is by having respected members of the community be the community mental health worker, that those community mental health workers will be able to connect with families in the communities and help them accept services, and then give us information on how the services are going so that we can inform the system of care moving forward. There may be services that we need to add to the mental health system of care to better serve our families. So part of this initiative will be looking at that moving forward.
Can I ask a follow-up? And I think that's great, and I'm very excited about it. I'm hopeful, and I think we're on the same page, that the services that people are referred to might well be not traditional therapy, but might be equine assisted or art therapy or supported boys and girls clubs or engaging things for the families. And I see you nodding your head, so that's great. And I think I saw in here that there was some degree of flex funds in this. Am I right? So if
Yes.
if your agency is referring little Joel to music lessons, there's a possibility to buy me a drum pad and drumsticks to support that intervention that keeps me on the arc of wellness, correct?
Yeah.
Great, very
Yes, correct.
exciting. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Are there any other questions before?
Can I
turn it
just
over
ask,
to- Yes.
yeah, one quick question about, could we apply for the leverage grant at the same time as we apply to this grant, or can we only apply for one at a time?
So our leverage opportunities are separate from our procurements, from our competitive procurement opportunities. So you can apply at any time for a leverage. So yes, you can apply for a leverage and you can apply for this procurement.
Amazing, thank you.
You're welcome. So if there's no more questions on this section, and I just want to assure you guys, we are going to talk about the financial viability section as well. But if there's no more questions on the section that I covered and Brooke covered, I'll turn it over to Laura Gansey to talk about the measuring impact and continuous learning section.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Gansey, and I'm the Director of Research and Planning here with the Children's Services Council. I'm going to be going over the measuring impact and results-based accountability sections of the procurement, like Maria mentioned. So we currently collect and report on performance measurement data across all of our funded programming in order to be accountable to our taxpayers and ensure that we're using taxpayer dollars effectively, but also to understand how our services are making a positive difference for the participants and for our community as a whole. We also know that providers have a wealth of expertise that could be used to improve programs, systems, and ultimately the lives of those that we serve, which has led us in the past several years to work alongside providers in gathering data beyond that of our typical accountability outcomes in order to further inform the service delivery and system improvements as well. We do continue to use RBA, results-based accountability, in our evaluation process, which ultimately asks and answers the questions of how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anybody better off? So for the HEAL programs, we want to collaborate with providers, participants, and community to develop the process for answering those questions. In order to do that, we will be using an emancipatory evaluation approach to measure the impact, value, and significance of the HEAL services. This methodology will engage provider staff and service recipients in assessing how these services are making a measurable impact and what would be the best means through which to measure that impact. So in other words, we would be co-designing the measures of success for these programs. This approach is highly collaborative and focuses on highlighting the voices of those that would traditionally have their voices silenced or minimized. It contrasts to traditional evaluation methods in which there's an assigned expert who extracts data to analyze and measure difference. With this approach, the research team will be co-designing and co-leading the process, ultimately determining the process for continued and ongoing evaluation, including establishing data collection and analysis methods and procedures. It's important to consider how your organization will allocate time, support, and energy to this process, as staff and program participants will be highly engaged throughout it. Additionally, there will be a concurrent emancipatory research project that the program staff will be expected to participate in. The project will focus on questions regarding mental health and resiliency in Broward County. Staff will be co-researchers in both initiatives and will be expected to attend trainings and actively participate in data collection, analysis, and solution building based on findings. Additionally, HEAL staff are expected to participate in learning communities, which will be designated opportunities to share experiences with the emancipatory process, performance measurement, and program implementation that will hopefully help all of the members learn what is working, what needs to be adopted, removed, or corrected. Once initial evaluation methods are established through the emancipatory evaluation process, specific instructions for gathering data, data entry, and reporting will be determined and regularly reviewed, again, alongside the research team, including program staff and participants. CSE will have a dedicated research and evaluation staff member assigned to this programming that will provide ongoing support and participate as part of the research team. This is quite a different approach that we're taking to performance measurement, and we're excited to embark on the journey with all awarded providers. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question. So the organization I'm with, Yoga for Change, we are currently collecting data on pre and post yoga. So physical pain, mood, and stress levels between our students. So if we, let's say that we had a member of CSC as a part of the research team, would they also be adding in different research points on top of what we collect already? Or correct, is that, because you mentioned it was customizable. So I'm just wanting to learn a little bit more about that as well, and whether we would have to take in different measurement tools as well.
You could potentially, absolutely. It would be based on the results of the emancipatory evaluation process. So typically, what happens in terms of outcome evaluation for our CSE funded programs is our research staff do literature reviews, conduct data analyses to see what those measurements of success might be, and we assign it as part of your contract. So we typically decide, which tools or assessments or psychometric measures we will use, and possibly like a pre and post test. So we typically decide that, and then we establish it in the contract. So there's expectations that providers will utilize X tool, they will implement it, let's just say, for example, at pre, during program entry, and then administer the test again at discharge. That's just one example. So typically that's all figured out and established in the contract prior to service delivery beginning. So it could have been the case that, like, for your program, we may have gone with the measures you currently use in terms of measuring, what you had explained. This will look very different because those specific measures will not be established ahead of time. They will be designed alongside all of the awardees as services are being provided.
Got it. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? I'm just scrolling through to make sure that no one's hand is up. I don't want to miss. I don't see any other questions. So I will then turn it over to Alicia Williams. Alicia, I don't know if Laura introduced herself, but make sure to introduce yourself before you begin your section.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Maria. My name is Alicia Williams. I'm the Assistant Director of Finance here at CSC. I will start by reviewing a very important area of your RFP submission, and that is your agency viability section, which is on page 17 of your package. Your agency most recent audited or reviewed financial statements must be submitted in caps prior to the RFP application submission. This must be submitted again by July 9th by 4 p.m. What this covers is your audit is and covers your agency's latest fiscal year end and must be completed and available within 180 days from the date of the agency's fiscal year end. Based on the audited or your reviewed financial statements submitted, the CSC will then perform the financial viability test to determine the maximum funding that may be awarded to your agency. After the initial review of the audited or your reviewed financial statements, the CSC allows for a financial viability review period for clarification or to provide any additional financial information as requested. This period will allow your agency to obtain a fiscal sponsor if needed, and you can expect to receive the results of the financial viability test no later than July 14th. The agencies will receive an email with the results, and you can also log into your CAP system to be able to verify the results of this financial viability test. Just to reiterate, if your agency failed to submit the agency financial viability section in CAPS by the deadline, you will not be able to submit an application for this procurement. Two things to remember with this is if you are currently funded by the CSC and have already submitted your agency's most recent audited or reviewed financial statements to the CSC, you just need to indicate this by checking the appropriate box in CAPS in the agency financial viability section. If you are currently funded by the CSC and you utilize a fiscal sponsor, or even if you are new to the CSC, but you already know your agency will require a fiscal sponsor, you do not have to submit your agency financial statements. However, you must indicate the agency is using or will be obtaining a fiscal sponsor by checking the appropriate box in the CAP system in the agency financial viability section. I'll now move on to discuss your program budget form, which is an attachment 9 that's a part of your package. And your program budget is a crucial part of the process. And what we've done is we've provided some resources to assist you in creating your budget. You have attachment 9 of your RFP packet. It contains a sample budget. It also contains a template for your reference. Additionally, attachment 8 is the guidelines for creating your budget. And at the end of my presentation, we'll also show you a video that provides an overview of the budget creation process. I'll talk about some key areas of your budget, and we'll start with your startup expenses. Now, for your budget, you can include startup expenses. This is on page 19 of your RFP. Your startup expenses are budget items that are needed in advance to prepare and start the program. This may include, but is not limited to, hiring and training your staff, getting your sites prepared, purchasing materials, and participants recruited before direct service delivery. One thing to remember is these funds must be used within 30 to 90 days of the contract effective date. And these are cost reimbursement funds. So once you are awarded and you do submit for reimbursement, we will require supporting documentation for these funds. Regarding your units of service, I know Maria mentioned earlier, it will be cost reimbursement for the first year, but subsequently the following years that may change. Cost reimbursement, normally it's cost reimbursement, but any expenses that are not done on a cost reimbursement basis, they're rolled into a unit cost. These are your operational costs. So the expenses include in determining the unit cost include your salaries, your benefits, your local travel, space and utilities, material and supplies. And as we're showing currently now, the different units of service that will be applicable to this RFP. Once awarded, your contract will identify the maximum number of units which can be billed to the CSC. And I'll talk through your match requirements, which is on page 20 to 21. There is a funding requirement of at least 5% match for all funding provided through CSC as we seek to fund projects that can operate in a fiscally sound manner. Your match can be provided as cash, or it can be an in-kind contribution such as volunteers, administrative overhead, equipment, or space dedicated to the project. Your match must be directly related to the operation of the program. Acceptable cash match may include matching funds from another unallocated sources that directly supports the program. Your administrative cost, that's on page 21, you can request, again, as part of your budget, you can request up to 12% of the total direct service cost in administrative costs to manage the project. Your administrative costs support the operation of your entire agency as a whole, and is related to the day-to-day operations and pertain to operation expenses rather than those expenses that are directly related to the provision of services. These include your payroll costs, your management staff salaries, and your audit fees. So example, you may have a receptionist that's answering your incoming calls, the cost of doing your payroll, or any management salaries, as I mentioned. These could all count towards your administrative cost. Now we'll talk on page 26 to 28 that discusses your financial viability and performance requirement. I know a question was asked earlier exactly what that is. What happens is the CSC, what we require for all agency that requests funding from us is to demonstrate financial solvency utilizing a financial viability test, which is based on your audited financial statements. So your statements, once you submit them in CAPS, which again is due by July 9th by 4 p.m., we will use those statements to perform a test. And the test will cover 4 areas. It's going to review your current assets as an agency, which can be easily converted into cash to pay for your current expenses, the number of months of expenses that your existing assets can cover without restrictions attached to them, the ability of your organization to meet its current obligations, and also the proportion of assets provided by debt. Once we do the test and the total points are calculated, the final score will determine the maximum level of funding that may be awarded to an agency over the CSC fiscal year. If this score is 14 points or over, there's no award limitations, it's unlimited. If the cumulative score falls between 10 to 13 points, the agency status is considered conditional and award amounts would be limited to a maximum of $215,400 annually. If the cumulative score falls between 6 to 9 points, at that point, your agency status is considered provisional and the total amount awarded would be limited to $80,800 annually. One thing to remember also, agency with revenues greater than $500,000 will provide an audit conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. For the smaller agency who has annual revenues less than $500,000, you may submit unaudited financial statements reviewed by a CPA to conduct this test. I'd recommend that you reference page 26 for additional guidelines for the smaller agency. Now, once you are awarded funding with CSC, all agency must submit annually a copy of their most recent financial audit completed by an independent Florida CPA, including a single audit if applicable. For example, if your fiscal year ends on June 30th, 2020, the most recent audited financial statements would have been completed and audited no later than December 31st, 2020. We require that our funded agency demonstrate an ongoing capacity to meet the CSC financial status. One thing to also note, if your agency financial viability status changes during the RFP funding cycle, appropriate revisions to your funding or your contract terms may be necessary at the time of the renewal. Now, after we do the tests, for agency wishing to apply for funding beyond the restrictions, so if you come in at a provisional with a funding of only $80,800, at that point, you may choose to secure a fiscal sponsor that can pass the annual fiscal test without any restrictions. Now, this fiscal sponsor role is to receive and administer funding provided by the CSC. They will act as a capacity building resource for the agency, carrying out the program activities and serving as the accountable provider of record in a tri-party agreement. The CSC will provide an unrestricted fiscal sponsorship fee directly to a fiscal sponsor to help offset the administrative costs incurred by the sponsoring agency. This fee will be up to 7% of the total funds awarded to the sponsoring agency, not to exceed $25,000. Before I end, that's my last thing. I'll just remind you again to submit your agency financial viability section in CAPS by July 9th by 4 p.m. I'll now turn over to Trisha, who's going to show you a video on your budget preparation process. Trisha?
Trisha, is everything okay?
You guys can't hear it?
No.
No, you stop your sharing, Trisha, but when you do it this time, make sure you're patching the audio through. There's a checkbox, I think, at the left bottom or the right side of the screen that should say audio.
Hello, and welcome to the Children's Services Council of Broward County. This video will provide you with an overview on how to prepare your budget, a key component of the funding process. It is essential to have a budget as it allows you to establish and accomplish the main objectives of your program. Your program budget is a method of allocating the expenses for the program that arises from the goals of this program. As with any budgetary method, the first step should be defining and identifying the budget activities. This detailed plan should include the program objectives, the task, and the activities that will be involved. Because your budget is a projected framework of the cost to operate the program, the goal is to ensure you request sufficient funds to cover all essential elements of your program. If you have a prior year budget, that is an excellent place to start using the previous year's budget and actual expenses, and then build upon this for this fiscal year. Direct program costs are most important, so make the best estimate of what resources will be needed to operate the program for the contract period. To create a successful budget, please ensure you gather the following details before you begin. You will need to consult with the program director, finance department, and your HR department to ensure you have the accurate and most complete details. First, you need the name of the program, the contract period, contract allocation amount, and contract number. Second, ensure you have all the employees that are going to be affiliated with the program, their names, titles, pay rates, time allocated to the program, and benefits that will be paid. Thirdly, the cost of the benefits included in the workers' compensation rates, health insurance premium, retirement benefit rates, and unemployment compensation rates. Next, ensure you have the various expenses that will be utilized in your program, such as the staff travel or mileage, utilities, space, supplies, flex funds, or value added if applicable. You'll also need the details of your match contribution or your match funding information. Most important, you will need the CSC provider budget guidelines. These guidelines will provide detailed information on each section of the budget form and answer any additional questions or concerns that you may have. Let us begin by reviewing some of the sections of the budget form and how to complete. First, start with the name of your agency, the name of the program, the contract number, and the period. The first section we will complete is your regular salaries and wages. In this section, you will only include positions that are direct cost to the program. This includes those program staff positions that perform activities that are exclusively associated with the specified CSC program. Indicate the name of each position, the name of the staff, whether the position is a full-time or part-time position to the agency, a description of the program cost, this is your method of calculation, and the amount that will be charged to the contract. Your FICA is automatically calculated in the budget worksheet using the total salaries and wages and the 7.65% established rate. The CSC provides funding for the following fringe benefits: retirement, life, and health, including dental, vision, short-term disability, long-term disability, gap insurance, workers' compensation, and unemployment compensation tax. This calculation is only for the employer's portion of retirement for the position. Please list each position separately. Copy the position title and staff name as stated in the salary section that we completed earlier. In the description of the program cost, this is your method of calculation column, be sure to provide the detailed calculation that you are using to compute the amount allocated to that position, such as the monthly rate paid by the employer, the number of months, and percentage of the cost allocated to the program. Most importantly, remember, if the position is only partially allocated to the program, the fringe benefit must also be allocated at the same rate. This next section is for your life and health insurance. Again, this section is only for the employer's portion of this health that includes your dental, your vision, your short-term disability, your long-term disability insurance premium. Be sure to list each position separately. Copy the position title and the staff name as stated in the prior section for the salary. Be sure to include your method of calculation, and also again, if the position is only partially allocated to the program, be sure that the fringe benefit is allocated at the same rate. The next section is your workers' compensation, which is insurance purchased by the agency that provides benefits for job-related employee injuries. Be sure to list each position covered by your workers' compensation policy and calculate the cost based on the policy rate and the portion of their salary allocated to the program. Next section is your unemployment compensation. This is an employer-funded tax that gives short-term benefits to those who lost or left their jobs for various reasons. The state of Florida's unemployment compensation rate is based on the first $7,000 of an employee's pay times the state of Florida unemployment tax rate for the year. Again, please be sure to list each position separately, copy the position title and staff name as stated in the salary section. And again, most importantly, if the position is partially allocated to the program, be sure your fringe benefit is also allocated at the same rate. We will now discuss your various expense accounts. Each expense line should be completed with the corresponding detailed description of the program cost and also the budgeted cost that will be charged to the CSC contract. You may perform calculations in the amount charged to contract column of the Excel worksheet, or you may input the whole dollar amount charged based on the description of the program cost outline. Expand rows or wrap text to fit into the rows. Expense line 1200 is for local or out-of-town staff travel. These are positions requiring travel, mileage rates, monthly mileage estimates, and total budgeted reimbursement. Expense line 1300 is for contractual services, consultants, or professional fees. For each contractual staff or consultant or contracted service, be sure to list the position title, the name if known, the services to be provided, the rates of pay, work products, and method of payment. In this sample budget that we're reviewing, we only have mileage. We do not have any contractual services. So you'll only utilize the expense lines that are applicable to your program. Expense line 1400 is for space and utilities. The building's total square footage must be documented for the budget and the cost per square foot. The cost per square foot should not exceed $22 per square feet, inclusive of janitorial and utilities. If janitorial and utilities are budgeted separately in the cost per square foot, then the maximum cost for space is $14 per square feet. The provider may choose one of two allocation methods. The allocation method chosen should be based on the nature of the services provided in the program. Programs that require space per student participant would utilize an allocation based on usage of square footage per space. Clinical intensive type programs that require space based on the number of staff would use an allocation based on their full-time employees. Please reference our budget guidelines, which provides more information and can help assure you choose the correct allocation. Things to remember. Regardless of the method that you utilize to calculate your space, the CSC will not reimburse for the cost of space that exceeds $22 per square feet, inclusive of janitorial and utilities. If janitorial and utilities are budgeted separately in the cost per square feet, then the maximum cost for space should not exceed $14 per square feet. Line 1600 is for your expense and your supplies. Expense includes, but are not limited to, office supplies, communications, printing and postage, training materials, snacks, background screening. Expenses also include expendable items costing less than $1,500, such as books, tape recorders, records, management software, etc. Generally, supplies include any materials that are expendable or consumed during the project year. Our next section is our cost reimbursement lines. Items requested in budget lines 8010 to 8095 are reimbursed solely on a cost reimbursement basis. Therefore, support and documentation will be required with your reimbursement request to support these expenses. To ensure that you fully utilize funds budgeted in these areas, think carefully. Only include amounts that are highly likely to be spent and do not over budget in these areas. Expense line 8010 is for flex funds. This may be used to meet individual client needs that present barriers to program participation and success. This emergency financial assistance allows providers to address the threat of foreclosure, eviction, or termination of utility services, temporary childcare expenses, home repairs, food, clothing, back-to-school supplies, bus passes, or gas cards, or other services or commodities. These funds are cost reimbursement funds. Expense line 8020 is for value added. This is used to pay for creative program enhancements that support the program's goals and improve participant participation and commitment. Food or refreshment for group activities, transportation for field trips, and participation or goal achievement incentives such as gift certificates or tickets to games or shows are some examples. These funds are cost reimbursement funds. In our sample budget that we're reviewing, we're only utilizing expense lines 8010, 8020, and 8050. Please refer to your provider budget guidelines for additional details behind the additional expense line items. This section is our startup expense line items. Please note, these funds are intended for those budgeted items needed to prepare and start the program. They must be used within 30 to 90 days of the contract effective date as specified. These funds are cost reimbursement funds. Please note that startup is used only during the initial contract year. These costs should be assigned to the appropriate expense line in subsequent years, such as staffing or expenses, etc. Expense line 8092 is for startup salaries or benefits. In this section, you will need to list each position by position title. The position title must match exactly the position title used in the contract scope of work staffing chart. Show the annual salary rate and the percentage of time to be devoted to the program. Include formulas used to calculate the fringe benefits. Only include positions that are startup positions. These funds are cost reimbursement. Startup staff benefit, FICA, is used to calculate it at 7.65% on all salaries. Health insurance is required for all employees working 30 or more hours per week. Retirement expenses optional, but definitely allowable by the CSC. Show formulas used to calculate fringe benefits that are retirement, insurance, workers' comp, unemployment, etc. Be sure to identify which positions the various calculations are referring to. Be sure to list each position separately. In this section for 8092, only include positions that are startup positions. These funds are cost reimbursement funds. In subsequent years, these costs should then be assigned to staffing. Expense line 8093 is for your startup expense or supplies. Itemize expendable items and show how the amounts are calculated. Expenses include but are not limited to office supplies, communications, printing and postage, training materials. Expenses also include expendable items costing less than $1,500, such as books, testing instruments, tape recorders. Other items include non-capital equipment items with a cost of less than $1,500. Example, your computers, your printer, your cabinets. Generally, supplies include any materials that are expendable or consumed during the course of the project. Only include supplies that are startup supplies. These funds are cost reimbursement funds. In our example, we're utilizing expense line 8093. In this sample program budget, we are utilizing laptops, which we're purchasing a total of 6 for $750. We're also purchasing 1 printer and then the Microsoft Office software for $200. Expense line 8900 is for your administrative cost. Administrative costs relate to the day-to-day operations of the agency and pertain to operation expenses rather than those expenses that are directly related to the provision of services. For example, a receptionist answering all incoming calls, the cost of doing payroll for the entire agency, and management staff salaries could count as administrative cost. CSC program administrative cost is limited to 12% of the requested amount, less the administrative cost. This means that you may request up to 12% of the total direct service costs as administrative costs to administer the project. Administrative costs must be itemized and defined and must include a description of the method of calculation. The final section on your budget will be for your match contributions. The CSC seeks to fund projects that it can expect to operate in a fiscally sound manner. Therefore, there's a funding requirement of a 5% match for all funding provided through the CSC. It is required that, at a minimum, 5% of the total grant dollars requested from the CSC be provided by any lead agency and/or any partners involved in a CSC-funded program. The match can be provided as cash or an in-kind contribution and must be directly related to the program's operation. Acceptable cash match may include matching funds from another unallocated source that directly supports the program. Parent fees are not allowed as cash matches. Acceptable in-kind contribution may include volunteers, administrative overhead, and equipment or space dedicated to the program. Now that you've completed your budget, this is the perfect time to be sure to double-check all entries and formulas before finalizing your budget. Congratulations, you have now completed building your budget. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to break in for just a second. Take CEO privilege. Sorry. Hi, for those that don't know me, I'm Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer. I'm the president CEO of the Children's Services Council. And I know there are a lot of new people who are attending this pre-bid conference today. And I just wanted to take a moment to welcome you, to tell you how excited we are to have you all here. And I know that a lot of this sounds very intimidating. But if you read the application carefully, if you take advantage of all of the guides that are provided to you, that great video that Alicia just did on the budget, the other videos available to you in CAPS, they really will walk you through how to do this. It doesn't mean that CSC funding is for everybody or that all of you will feel comfortable going it alone. Partnering with another agency is a great way to get your foot in the door, remembering to do that fiscal test in advance, as you were just advised, to understand if you need a fiscal support partner, and interviewing such a partner carefully to make sure that they can give you the support that you need. This is a really exciting project, and I hope you will all weigh your participation carefully and take advantage of all of those resources. I know you still may have questions for Alicia. I'm going to get out of the way, but you're also going to hear from Adama in a moment about all of the other ways that CSC can help you once you get the award, if you need it. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Maria and Adama, for indulging me. Good luck.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Was there any questions? I know the one question was regarding the viability section. I hope I answered it, but if you need any further information on that, please let me know.
Hi, Adama. My name is Robin Newkirk, and I'm with the Urban League of Broward County. I just want to be clear. First of all, this is very well written. I'm extremely excited about this. It's a much needed service. So happy that you guys are doing this. But I just want to make sure I'm clear just on the match. So match can be cash or in kind.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there was a question, Alicia, don't leave. I think there was a question at the very beginning of the pre-bid conference about the fiscal viability test. Yes. And it is one of the attachments. So I believe it's attachment 6 that actually in the procurement, the fiscal viability test is included. And Alicia, they can apply it. It's a test that they can apply themselves using their financials, right?
Yes, it's inside the RFP package that explains exactly if you want to do the test on your own, how to get that done. But as I mentioned earlier, it's by you submitting your financial statements to us, and then we'll do the test for you, and that determines your maximum funding level.
And just to reiterate, the financial statements are due to us in the CAPS system by, I'm looking now, July 9th at 4 o'clock. So it is extremely important that if you want to consider applying for this procurement, that you submit your financials in the CAP system. If you miss that deadline and we have no financials for you by that deadline, you will not be able to apply for this procurement.
Maria, can I just add to what you just said, that if you are planning to apply for more than one area, you will have to make sure you do that agency financial viability section for each of the areas that you intend to apply for.
So for, as we talked, there's 3 regions, North, Central, South. So if you want to apply for all 3 regions, you would have to submit your financial information to us 3 times in the CAP system. So thank you, Tricia. Are there any questions for Alicia regarding the budget? And this budget video will be available to you in the CAPS system under solicitation attachments. So later when you're creating your budget, you will have this video available to you in the CAPS system under solicitation attachments. And included in the procurement is a sample budget that was created to give you additional guidance on what you may want to consider for this specific procurement. So there's multiple things we've done to assist you in the development of the budget.
So Maria, I think I'm next if it's time. So I'll introduce myself for those on the call that don't know me. My name is Adama Dusil. I'm the Assistant Director of Training and Capacity Building here with the Children's Services Council. First, thanks to everyone for joining us today for this really exciting first step in our HEAL body of work, as Maria started the day with Want to thank everyone who's been a part of supporting the initiatives. And today, what we are discussing, the Heal Trauma work, is one part of a larger body of work. We've engaged in a number of community-based conversations with a lot of you that are on the call and that have supported the initiative. And this is the first wave of resources and support and programs that we are going to be putting out into the community to look at the impacts of trauma and to help continue to support the resiliency work that is already going on in the designated community. So I'll speak today specifically about some of the capacity building supports that will be a part of this Heal Trauma work. But then I just also wanted to let people know that we will be looking to do some specific capacity building grants with organizations that we know are already doing resiliency work in these communities. So in a few months down, there will be another opportunity for folks to engage to continue to build on this initiative. So this is step one with the community mental health workers, but there will be other grant opportunities looking to specifically engage folks and to enhance programs and services. So we just want to put that out there. And I know we started with that. So since our inception, the Children's Services Council has always provided capacity building support to our funded provider network. So those are the programs like this that we actually put direct money in to support building the services, as well as the larger child and family serving community at large in Broward County. So, and that is done through training. It's done through a network that we have, which is our agency capacity building network. And also just the ability as CSC to be a convener and to bring people together to network and to form bonds and to start working within various peer groups. So our main and core goals is to increase impact, also to help to improve the performance and to ensure the sustainability of the programs that are out there serving our children and families. Specifically, over the course of the past 4 to 5 years, we have found that working with organizations and agencies that focus on business development through coaching and hands-on consulting and individualized support has been really, really useful in getting the best types of outcomes from our child and family serving nonprofits. So to this end, we started working with the Small Business Development Center of South Florida, or SBDC. We have 2 great anchor partners in George Gatson and Rafael Cruz, and with them comes a powerhouse team members that specialize in a variety of different things, marketing and media, HR, just fundamentals of business development. And as a part of this grant, we are making it accessible for the 3 awarded organizations to receive that type of coaching, consulting, and business support through this Heal Trauma grant. So with that, in addition, you will also have access to all of the capacity building supports provided by the Children's Services Council through our agency capacity building committees. That's our instructor-led trainings. We have over 200 plus titles. We have a cadre of facilitators that we work with. And if we don't have a title that we're currently putting out there for our community, we are very well resourced and can create opportunities. I think we actually have some of our trainers and facilitators on the call today. We have a 24-hour online courses available that CSC provides and funds, as well as some that are available nationwide that you can link to through our training website. We have our capacity building grants that we put out on an annual basis, formerly known as capacity building mini grants, but those are project-based. So again, if you don't get this grant, there's annual opportunities to tap into those capacity building grants. Leadership trainings that we do throughout the year. 2 or the most prominent ones would be our Learning to Lead program that we do in partnership with Ronick Ratlauer, and also our Frequency Matters 3-part training series that we do with Kristen Mackey. We also have opportunities for racial equity training that we put out there for the community, fully funded by CSE and our anchor partners at Broward College, and a network of resources, including funding opportunities on our capacity building resource page. So from there, you'll find all of our capacity building related trainings, access to local and national grants, access to meeting spaces, business spaces, and also access to local for-profit and nonprofit agencies that serve specifically to provide capacity building support to nonprofits in Broward County. So those are just some of the things that you can access. We also have quarterly agency capacity building meetings that we host and bring industry experts to work with local nonprofits so that you can build up your business acumen, and then other e-based resources like our website. So as I mentioned before, a part of the grant will focus on getting support and coaching and consulting by SBDC for the business aspect of the grant. But in addition, a new component that we will be providing is programmatic support, and that will be focused on a lot of the fundamentals. Some of the things that small to niche organizations that started their nonprofits may not have had a chance to build up, but we know are really important, right? How to manage staff, how to get those core HR documents together, how to put together program schedules, how to interface with your stakeholders, be it your board members or your funders, also your parents and partners. And I think in the document, there's a list of other things that we will provide, making sure that you can learn about your program evaluation skills, assessing the resources that you have and figuring out how to refine those, expanding programs and services, improving planning and project management skills. Also, we have access to toolkits, and that will be one of the core pieces too. So not only will you get the coaching and consulting in the program areas, but we'll also ensure that you get the means to continue to build on and learn more and be able to implement what you've learned on your own. So Maria, I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted me to cover in that section, and I'm available also to answer any questions.
I think you did a great job. Thank you, Adama. Are there any questions about what Adama has covered? No? Okay. So thank you again, Adama. So the next section that we wanted to cover is the CAP system, our contract administration and procurement system. I wanted to point out that we have made enhancements to the system. So if you applied in our last procurement, there have been enhancements made between then and now, and Pooja will be reviewing those enhancements. So Pooja, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everyone. My name is Pooja Yagnik. I'm Systems and Procedures Manager here at CSC. As Maria mentioned, that there have been some enhancements that we've pushed through in our CAP system. So if you have used CAPS in the past, the interface is still the same, but major changes have happened to the financial viability section and the final submit to CSC section as well. A new video or a tutorial has been created. You'll watch it shortly, and it's also available on our website at cscbroward.org. It's also available as a quick link under the solicitation attachments. If you have any questions, I'm here available after you watch the video to answer them. Thank you. Welcome to the CAPS tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to learn on how to apply for a procurement that has been posted by CSC. The tutorial will include a mock procurement, and none of the questions or scenarios relate to a live procurement or any procurement that may be posted by CSC in the future. This video will use acronyms such as CAPS, which is the Contracts Administration and the Procurement System, which is the online portal used to apply for any procurements, CSC, which is Children's Services Council of Broward County, RFP, RFQ stand for Request for Proposals or Qualifications, EIN or the SunBiz number stand for the Employer Identification Number, and AFF stands for the Application for Funding. Any procurement that has been posted by CSC would be made available on the main website at www.cscbroward.org on its main page and also on the Providers Funding Opportunities page. On the Funding Opportunities page, you will also find any and all tutorials such as this video be available for you to refer to in the future while applying for a procurement. So once you select the procurement that you would like to apply from this page, you would land on a page that looks like this. which lists the published date and the expiration date and a brief description of the RFP that has been posted. Today, we're going to work with the 2021 enhancement test. I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular procurement, which will land me on a page that shows me the timetable or the timeline attached with the procurement, any attachments such as the full RFP document, rating tool, etc. The type of procurement it is. So in this case, it's an RFP, the date it was made available, the due date, the time remaining, and the expiration date. To download any attachments, you would need to sign in. If you do not have a login, the system will prompt you to create a login. You can start an application by clicking on either spot on the top left or the blue Start a New Application. Also, the Ask a Question will be made available to you in the time frame that Ask a Question has been posted by CSC. So let's go in and start a new application. So in this case, I'm going to use a test user and log into the system. If you're a new user, you would just need to put in your first name, last name, and email address to proceed with the application. You would land on the same page if you were to download any attachments or resources from the main page. So I'm going to use applications 10 and go ahead and log into the system. The first thing that the system does is prompt me to update my contact information. Once I update my contact information, it asks me if I'm applying as an individual or an agency. If I'm going to choose an agency for now and select my organization. There are some organizations that are already available in the drop-down list. If your organization is not listed, click on Organization Not Listed, and you will be prompted to enter your employer identification number, which will pull your organization from the Sunbiz website and auto-populate in the system. So for now, I'm going to just select something from the drop-down list and proceed. Then it prompts me to put in a application name, and in this case, I'm going to put it in as a test application. If you're applying for more than one procurement on CSC's website, this is for your reference to appropriately label your applications so you know how to organize them or you can refer to them easily on your end. If you're working with any co-authors, this is the place where you would add your co-author. You would simply click on Add More, enter their title, first name, last name, email, phone, and check on Send them an email so that they're prompted to create a login for the system on their end. This will allow them to work on the application or the proposal simultaneously with you. In this case, I'm going to apply just myself and click on Proceed. So once you click on Proceed, you'll land on a page which states your application name, your agency name, the status of your application, which is currently in progress, the due date, and the expiration date. It will also give your application an ID number. You will see that on the right-hand side, there is a pod called Sections. These are all the sections associated with this application for funding and this procurement. Each section may have a different deadline. So in this case, the agency financial viability is due on 6/25, whereas all the other sections are due on 6/30. You will also see a modify button on the top ribbon and also modify blue buttons in the particular sections. You can start to complete your application by clicking on either of the modify buttons. If you're an agency that knows that you will use a fiscal sponsor to apply, you can add your fiscal sponsor by clicking on the edit button in the Add a Fiscal Sponsor tab. Once you go here, you can either choose from an organization from the drop-down list or click on Organization Not Listed and enter the fiscal sponsor's EIN number and their name and assign them as a fiscal sponsor. In this case, we will apply without a fiscal sponsor for now. The process to add a fiscal sponsor after the financial viability would be the same, or midway through the application would be the same as long as you're doing it before its deadline date. The files pod lists any and all files that you upload into this particular proposal or AFF. The solicitation attachments are all the attachments that you saw on the first page where you started the new application. You can also view the solicitation by clicking on View Solicitation, which will land you on the first page that you were on where you started the application. Ask a Question is still available for you, and you can submit a question to CSC as long as you're within the time frame of submitting questions. You can also print your application by clicking on Print. And again, the view application is the long form view of your full application. You'll see that there's a submit full application to CSC button that's grayed out. This will only be made available to you once all the red X's turn into a green check mark. It will also tell you that the full application has not yet been submitted. It can only be submitted after all sections have been marked complete. So let's go in and modify this application. So I'm going to go in and click on modify forms. And once I do that, I'm going to attach the files that this section is asking. You'll see that it's asking to upload 2 files. So I'm going to select them from my computer. Please be very mindful of the file types that you're attaching. If an incorrect file is attached, it may not be considered. So please be mindful of the file type and also the label. So I'm going to go ahead and select the second file as well. And then you'll see that there's a mark this section completed checkbox that's been provided. So if you think that you've attached the correct file types and you want to move on, you can check this off and click on next. But if you, for some reason, it was not the correct response and you wanted to swap it out later, you can just click on save and continue later. If you click on save and continue later, the section will not turn into a green check mark. It will stay as a red X, which is informing you that this section needs your attention and you need to go in and verify information. You'll still see that the files that you attached are still in here. So let's say for now that I am confirming that these are the correct files and I want to move on and truly mark this section as completed. I'm going to check off mark this section as completed and go to the next section. So as soon as I do that, it turns into a green check mark. The next section is the agency financial viability. So this section is extremely important. This is the only section that once you submit it to CSC, it cannot be recalled. And you'll see a warning here that this section can't be modified or recalled once submitted. So be mindful of the section deadline and also the file types you're attaching, as mentioned previously, that once you submit it, you cannot modify the section, whereas all other sections are available for you to modify up until the deadline for the procurement or until you do the final submission of the application to CSC. The agency financial viability gives you 4 options. If you choose to submit your audited financial statements, reviewed statements, or you can also choose that CSC currently has your most recent audited or reviewed financial statements on file, or if you're an agency that is going to assign a fiscal sponsor from the get-go, as we previously talked about, you can choose the 4th option. So pick your correct options. If you're choosing your audited financial statements, you would click on audited financial statements and choose the appropriate file in the audited financial statements section, attach it, and proceed further. Let's say you were not going to choose your audited financial statements and just do the reviewed statements. You would repeat the same process, but check off reviewed financial statements and choose the appropriate file and attach it in that particular section, in that particular pod. Let's say you select that CSC currently has the most recent audited or reviewed financial statements. You'll just click on that option. In this scenario, you do not need to attach any files, as you're indicating that CSC has them on file, and the decision would be made based on the review of that file, and you would receive it later through the process. If you're an agency that's assigning a fiscal sponsor from the get-go, click on agency chooses not to submit financial statements and will assign a fiscal sponsor, and repeat the process of assigning a fiscal sponsor that we spoke about earlier in the application process. Please be sure to assign your fiscal sponsor, enter their organization name, and assign them as a fiscal sponsor, which will prompt them to log into the system and complete the steps that they need to do in order for your application to be considered. So in this case, I'm going to attach the audited statements, and I'm just attaching a test file for the purpose of this tutorial. And I am going to click on next. If I click on next without marking the section completed, or if I click on save and continue later, I'll still be able to modify it, because what it tells me is that I haven't submitted it to CSC yet. And how I know that is it's still a red X. However, if I were to mark this section as completed and click on next, it will be submitted to CSC, and there will not be the ability to do a recall from your end. And I want you to pay attention that this is your screen. So it's telling you that you've submitted or you've completed the agency financial viability on this date. However, when you go into the applications details view, it's still showing as a red X. So what this means is that yes, you've submitted it, but it's still pending review from CSC end. When CSC does the review, you'll receive a decision. That decision would be sent to you via an email notification prompting you to log into the system and to accept or deny that decision. Or if you're already logged into the system, you would see on the main dashboard or on the screen on the top left, or also under the agency financial viability. Once you accept the decision or assign a fiscal sponsor, whatever the case may be, once you make that decision, that is when this will turn into a green check mark. So until you accept it, it's going to remain as a red X under the application details page, and the submit full application to CSC would still remain grayed out until you receive green checks on all these sections. I also want you to notice that the warning that it states that the financial viability section must be completed, reviewed by CSC, and the award limitation must be accepted by the agency before the full application can be submitted for consideration. It also states that the full application has not yet been submitted. The application can only be submitted after all sections have been marked completed. So let's go back into the modify view and go to the next section that you want to modify. So let's go to the agency details section number 1. The first question is a Q&A. You'll see that it has a word limit of 900 words. You'll also see that there's a word tracker at the bottom. Once I start typing, it keeps a track of how many words are remaining, and it will not allow you to type beyond 900 words. This is a plain text box. So if you are copy pasting your response, keep it in a format-free version on your Word and paste it, which will be the easiest way for you to paste. If you're trying to paste beyond 900 words, the system will cut it off at 900 words. So be mindful of the word limit. Since it's a plain text box, you cannot highlight, underline, or italicize anything. Everything must be done in plain text only. The next question is a yes or no. If I were to select no, nothing really happens. If I select yes, there may be additional questions that I may need to answer. So there could be some questions in your AFF that have a yes and no, and depending on your response, you may have extra information that you may need to provide. So for now, I'm going to mark this section as completed, click on next. And I want you to see that every time I do that, I still have the ability to go in and modify the sections that I've already marked as completed. So the forms was marked as completed, so was the agency detail section 1, but I still have the modify buttons available. And that is happening before because the procurement deadline hasn't passed, and also that you haven't submitted the full application to CSC. If you were to submit the full application to CSC, those modifies would go away, or if it's beyond the deadline, it would go away. So let's go into the second section. It's a chart form. So here it's asking you to enter a chart and an entry. So I'm going to click on new entry, and I'm going to answer the questions that it's asking and save my entry. So once I do that, you'll see that entry pop up on the chart. You can also do a second entry and as many as you like, depending on what's being asked. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this section as completed and go to the next section. The next section is the budget section. It's asking you to upload a file. Please, again, be very mindful of the file type that you upload, and it's the correct file. If it's an incorrect file that you upload, it may not be considered. You can also see that a sample program budget template has been provided to you here. It's a hyperlink, so if you were to click on this, it takes you to a page, and you can download and print this template. Or just view it in this screen. I'm going to go ahead and click on back and upload a budget file. So I'm going to attach it here, mark the section as completed, and click on save and continue later. So again, this is your view. It's telling that you've completed all the sections. You still have the ability to modify all sections besides the agency financial viability section. It says to submit your full application, click on the application details view. So I'm going to click there. But here I can see that I'm still waiting for CS to make a decision on the agency financial viability. That's the only section that's a red X. All others are into a green check mark. But because we have one red X, the submit full application to CSC is not available. But up until this point, you still can modify any other section that is needed. If you need to modify it, you can just click on modify and proceed. So now I'm going to go in as on the back end and make a decision on your agency financial viability, and then show you what happens on your end. So when CSC makes a decision on your financial viability, you'll receive a notification from the system via an email, which is going to tell you what that decision is. So currently the decision was made, and I received an email saying I have no award limitations. It also prompts me to go into my application and accept the decision. So if you're logged out, you can log in via the link provided in the email, or if you're already logged in, which I am right now, I would just refresh my page and it will prompt me to accept the maximum qualifying amounts. Also, it says the status, which is no award limitations. I can do this in two spots, either accept it on the top left here, or also under the agency financial viability where it says accept max qualifying amount. If the decision was something else, such as provisional or conditional, the buttons here would say provisional or conditional, and you would have a second option to assign a fiscal sponsor. So if you were to assign a fiscal sponsor, you would click on the assign a fiscal sponsor and go through the same process that we spoke about earlier on in this tutorial. And the fiscal sponsor would get notified and would have to complete their part in order for your application to get considered. So for now, let's just go in and accept max qualifying amount. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you will see that all these red X's are now green check marks, and the submit full application to CSE buttons become available. Again, you can still modify any section up until now if you want to. If not, and if you're ready to submit your full application, you can do so as well. Keep in mind that in order to submit the full application, you have to be under the view application view. If you're under the modify view, it still just gives you only the ability to submit it. But again, you have a warning that for you to submit the full application to CSE, you need to go into the application details tab and submit the full application to CSC. Also note that your application status is currently sitting in progress. As soon as you submit it, it will go into the submit status. You'll see that there's a couple of cache buttons provided on the page. If for some reason your page is not refreshing, we suggest just clicking on cache. It makes your page refresh and information pop up smoother and easier. We recommend using the cache button every so often, just so that it's clear and all information is being displayed properly. So if you're ready to submit the full application to CSC, just go in and click on submit full application to CSC. There'll be a warning that pops up that are you sure you want to submit it? Click on OK. And your application has been received by CSC. All the modify buttons have disappeared, and you just have a long form view of all the Q&A and your responses. And also under the files pod, you'll see that there's now a lot of files. These are all the files that were provided by you with your proposal that were submitted to CSC. Authorized agency users is you, and if it's if you've added anybody else, they would be listed down here. Solicitation attachments is again all the attachments associated with this procurement. You can access them at any time you want to. This video will also be available to you under the solicitation attachments, so you will have easy access if you need to refer to anything here. This concludes our tutorial. Thank you.
So I just want to thank you, Maria. I just have a couple of things, if it's okay to go right now. Okay, so if you're a new organization and you're not listed in our database, and you enter your EIN number, which is the employer identification number, we have our database connected to Sunbiz. Sometimes the Sunbiz database is down, and if you put your EIN number, it may not auto-populate. And if that happens, just send us a ticket to helpdesk@cscbroward.org with your agency name, address, phone number, contact information, website, and email, and we will populate it on the back end in our database, and then it will become available for you in the drop-down list. So just email us at helpdesk@cscbroward.org with that information. Any technical questions should be emailed to helpdesk@cscbroward.org. Do not ask that through the ask a question in the system. Just email it to the help desk. We are generally available during business hours, but please do not wait until the last minute to ask a question. If there's many tickets, we may not be able to respond at the very last minute. So please try to complete your proposal in advance And if there's technical issues, reach out to us in advance. That's all on my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja. So both videos that we showed you during this pre-bid, the budget video and the video Pooja just showed, are available after the pre-bid in the CAP system under the solicitation attachment section. So you can look at that later if needed. And Tricia, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I think Pooja said pretty much everything that I was going to mention. But just to reiterate that the only time that CSC staff can verbally answer any questions would be now during this pre-bid. Once this pre-bid ends, we can no longer answer any verbal questions, and the only questions we can answer would be the written questions, which would start today at 4 o'clock up through Thursday at 12 p.m. And those would all have to be submitted in caps through the Ask a Question tab. After that, the only questions that we could answer or issues we could deal with would be technical issues on the use of the CAP system, as Pooja mentioned. So you would need to email the help desk, which is helpdesk@cscbroward.org. Please don't email CSC staff directly with technical questions, because all of that would have to be forwarded to the help desk anyway, and you would get a faster response if you just initially directly emailed the help desk, so it could be processed in the order it was received. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what Tricia said, please use the helpdesk@cscbroward.org address if you are having technical issues and you need our assistance. If you email me or anyone at CSC, I just will be forwarding that email to the help desk. So it actually delays our response if you go directly to a CSC staff or delays our response to you. And again, please don't wait until the last minute to begin this application with online systems. You never know if you're going to be having a problem with your internet. So strongly encourage you not to wait until the last minute to begin this application. The deadline for submission is August 4th. So we did build in time to give you to do the application. And I wanted to again reiterate that the agency financial viability, the deadline for you to submit information to us is July 9th. And then we will get back to you by July 14th regarding the determination. So just keep those, the timetable is real important. Please keep that someplace where you can refer to it often. So at this time, are there any questions that we haven't answered?
Maria, this is Christine,
Yeah.
and I have a question for you. In the actual program design, the questions, the application questions, question number 1, that revolves around the social vulnerability index. There was a really great handout that was included on the RFP, the 2-pager with links off of that. I have seen before additional data such as socioeconomic status and additional information other than what is provided on those 2 social vulnerability index pages. Is it possible to provide any additional content regarding race and ethnicity for those designated census tracts in the target areas within the county?
Christine, we'll have to answer that in writing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maria. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I do have a question. I'm an intern for Yoga for Change, and I stepped in because Alex had to step away. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on one thing. So can you only apply for the grant one time, but you can apply to the different, like the 3 different places?
So I'm not sure I understand your question. You can only apply to the grant one time. So you can apply, an organization can submit an application to serve children and families in the North, in the Central, and the South. An organization can submit 3 separate applications. if you want to serve, if you want to be considered for all 3 areas, or 2 separate applications, or you can choose an area and submit 1 application.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Maria, can I backtrack on that with the CAPS perspective? So when you were watching the tutorial and when I clicked on start a new application, that was 1 application. So if you're applying for an additional area, you would just repeat the process for the 2nd application. And that's where the labels become very important for your reference. Just label it appropriately, whether it's north or south. So when you're going back in, reviewing it or editing it, you know which one you're in. So that's an easy point of reference for you.
Thank you, Pooja. That is really important to make sure. You don't want to submit, if you're submitting for multiple areas of the county and you have different budgets for the areas, you want to make sure that you know what's being attached to those applications. So definitely label your application for funding appropriately so that you can attach the right documents. Are there any other questions? No? All right, so if there are no other questions, I'm just going through to make sure we covered everything on our list. So again, make sure to keep track of the timetable of important dates. And if you do have additional questions, submit them in writing by June 24th at 12 p.m. to within the CAP system is where you have to submit these questions. So don't send them to any CSC staff. They have to be submitted within the CAPS system. And then we will complete the pre-bid question and answer document and have it available in the CAPS system by June 30th. So make sure to check the system to see when that document is available. If we can get it done sooner, we will, but by June 30th, it will be in that system. So if there are no more questions, I'll go ahead and make sure one more ask. Is there any other questions before we conclude the pre-bid conference? No? Well, thank you all for spending 2 hours of your afternoon with us. I hope that this has been helpful to you. I wish you all the very best in your application for these services. So then this concludes the pre-bid. Thank you.